He's a great friend to Sweetwater. Ladies and gentlemen, fabulous Fab DuPont.
All right. So, well, we tracked the song yesterday. I'm not going to bore you with the details. You were here. And what we're going to do today is we're going to mix the song we tracked yesterday. So there's no smoke, no mirrors, no nothing. It's what we did yesterday. So I'm going to show you this diagram here so you know what we have. Dangerous Music makes the D-Box. The D-Box is the center of the studio. It is our monitor control, source switcher, so I can listen, say, to my iPod or to my DAW or to whatever, radio, if you're into that kind of stuff. It's also my summing mixer. Today we're going to do analog summing with this song. It is my headphone preamp. It is my volume control. My speaker switcher, it's the center, the heart of the studio. We'll also be using a back CQ and a liaison I'll show you in a while. Right below is the Apollo, which is made by Universal Audio. That's our interface. Here at the bottom, you see the hardware on the left, which I'm probably going to use mostly manually. And then the liaison is my switcher. That's my insert switcher, as you saw yesterday. I'm going to be using that again. All right, so the first thing we should do is probably listen to what we did yesterday. All right, so this is my raw files. You're listening to it straight from Studio One.
Okay, I wanna try you on. Our looks are louder than the sound of our hearts are beating. They don't need to be real now. We were better when we're faded. And I'm hungry for you. Said I'm hungry for you. Oh baby, oh baby, oh baby. Oh, oh, oh. I can feel it when you walk. I can feel it when you talk. I can feel it when you walk. I can feel it when you talk. I can feel it. Oh, heat.
It repeats, it's a pop song. All right, so that's a pretty good recording considering the conditions, not bad. I think I'm gonna change my rules. Usually I always start with the vocal, but I think the vocal is fine. So I don't think it needs a lot of work, it's gonna be just fine. I think the drums need a lot of love because they feel very real. And the reason for that is because the set sucked. Did I say that out loud? I didn't say it loud. So this was not the best set for the purpose. It should have been an old 60s Gretsch set. It would have sounded right, but we're going to be okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bus all these drum tracks into one bus to make them an entity. I'm not going to treat this as if I were doing a hip-hop record or a modern pop record. I'm not going to make an enormous bass drum, enormous snare drum, and every time going boom, boom, boom. No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to treat the whole drum set as an instrument because I feel that at this period of time, and with this kind of music, that's how it should sound. Now, that's a question of taste. You may disagree, and I'm okay with that. But I'm here, and I have the control, so that's the way I'm going to do it. All right. So I'm going to add a bus for the selected tracks, and I'm going to make sure that that bus goes out to line 1, 2. And since I'm totally OCD, I'm going to name this Clean Drums. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start processing the whole drum set as a whole. So, for example, if I listen to just the drum set, let me mute everybody else. So let's go to a place where it gets loud. The first thing I'm compelled to do is take the overheads down a little bit because they're annoying me, in a delightful kind of way, of course. Maybe a little more bass drum. Okay, that's good enough for rock and roll. So the next thing I'm going to do is try and alleviate some of the stuff that bothers me. The first thing that bothers me is too real, right? Everything is like a little clinical and a little real. So usually when that happens, I tend to want to, although I never really owned a tape machine, I think tape should fix that. So I'm going to put a tape plug-in on the bus, so on the whole bus, right? I'm going to make sure that the noise is off because we're not that into tape that we want the noise to. I'm going to saturate it a little bit. Okay, so let me match levels. So this is without. This is with. Actually, a little more. Okay, now we have it mostly matched. So now we can really tell what we're doing. Okay, so no processing. Listen to the attack of the instruments, right? Don't listen to anything complicated. Just listen to the attack of the instruments, especially the snare, and listen to the color, the tone of the bass drum. Without. With. Who hears a difference? Who doesn't hear a difference yet? Working on it. Okay. I'm going to do that again. It's okay to not hear a difference. This is pretty subtle, but that's what we're here for, right? So without. Listen to the attack of the snare, especially on the double hit. That prat, prat, right? Listen to that. Do you feel how the snare is moving forward a little bit for those two splats? Okay. Now this is with the tape. See, that little edge on top is gone. It's not an EQ, it's dynamic because the harder it hits, the harder the model of the tape is pushing back. Now, this plugin, for example, I like because you can easily push back on some transients like this without compressing or without EQing or making it sound smaller or anything like that. So it's a nice first process. I want to do that. Of course, that amount of processing is not going to change the course of modern music. We're aware of that. But we work in shades. So let's go to the next shade. The next thing I'm inspired to do is to put the pull tech on it for some reason. Let's see. This is without the pull tech. This is with. Everybody hear that difference, right? It's wider and then it's a little cleaner. What am I doing here? I'm removing a little bit of 200 where it's a little bunched up. There's a little bit of a at 200. And then I'm added some 100 below so that feels more like this. I'm doing a little bit of this at the bottom. And then I'm just adding some high end because it sounds a little dull. Just a little bit dull. Now, if I were comparing this to a 60s record, it wouldn't sound dull. That's the thing. It's dull for a modern mind because we are surrounded by Katy Perry on all sides. And yes, of course. For those of us who are alive today, if you go buy a piece of cheese in a store, you get the piece of cheese and free Katy Perry with it. And consequently, your brain is adapted to the new Katy Perry sound, which is unbelievably bright. And so when you sit down at your desk to mix a song, you think of the cheese, but you also think of Katy Perry, which kind of goes together a little bit. Just a tiny bit. And it affects every decision you make. As a mixer, my clients, or as a producer, my clients expect me to give them a record that is, unless I'm in a complete throwback vibe, they expect me to give them a record that both conjugates their influences and modern sound. So if I were mixing this in a fully accurate vibe, I probably wouldn't raise the high end because those drums were pretty muffled at the time. But since we all are corrupted, then I will play to that corruption. Fair enough? Okay. So I'm pretty happy with this. Let's just say it does not suck. Fair? Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another bus that I'm going to call a effects channel. That I'm going to call drum crush. And that's going to be my unpolite drum bus. I'm going to do parallel processing. As you noticed, I have no compression on the drums yet. Okay? And I'd like to keep it that way as long as possible. And we'll see how much I can do that. Because I kind of like the fact that it's incredibly dynamic. It's fun. And also, it has that sound, right? It has that buoyant sound that we're looking for. So I create this aux right here that's called a drum crush. And I'm going to send all drums to that drum crush bus. So what I'm doing right now is I'm listening to just the drum crush. So there's no plugins on it. But usually when people think dirty, bad sounding stuff, somebody's going to hate me for this, they think SSL. Well, let me rephrase. When I think crushed, I think SSL. So I'm going to run just the crush bus, okay, through an SSL plugin from UA. And then I'm going to be fully complete Attila on it. What am I doing? I'm compressing the hell out of it. I'm high passing the input so that the bass drum doesn't make the whole thing pump too much. So I'm removing some of the bottom. I'm crushing the whole signal. And then what else am I going to do? I don't know. Let's see. So we started here. And now we're here. Not the most subtle processing ever, but terribly efficient. So in this particular balance, for me, I think I have too much of the overhead. My crush bus is on an aux, so I can lower my overhead a little bit. That's good enough for rock and roll. So then what I'm going to do is mute that, go back to my clean signal. And then I'm going to slowly raise the crush signal under the clean signal so you can hear what it does. Fair enough? Okay, here we go. I think I like that. So I'm going to play you with and without. So this is raw. This is with. Who needs a pointer as to what to listen to? Okay. Listen to the bottom of the snare. See, the snare goes king, and it's got that thing, right? Listen to the bottom of the snare, and imagine the snare as an object. Now, does it have the same depth with and without the parallel processing? And then how much distance is there between the snare and the bass drum with and without parallel processing? We'll start without. With. It's thicker and it's denser and it's also more buoyant and more exciting. It's not night and day. I could make it night and day if you want, but this is not a circus. We're not trying to make a record. So I'm going to keep it there. If you want me to exaggerate for the sake of demonstration, this is with a lot of parallel processing. First without. And with. You catch the principle? So the idea is to make the stuff sound bigger, but not necessarily louder, you know, thicker. All right, let me put it back down to a more metrosexual level, if you will. The bass drum is annoying the hell out of me, so I'm gonna use an EQ, say for example the pre-EQ from these guys, the built-in EQ, which is quite lovely, and I'm gonna play this. So I'm probably gonna high pass it a little bit, and then remove some of that thing, okay? So I'm doing so listening to the whole processing chain, because now, if I had EQ'd the bass drum first and then did the whole chain, now, in this particular case, the chain is very influential on the tone of the kick. So I'm going to EQ the kick now, listening to all the post chain. I think that's pretty nice. I'm removing the and I'm high passing a little bit. All right. So basically, I'm removing the mud. Check it out. This is where we started. And this is where we're at now. Much more natural, right? Okay, it doesn't have all that wool and everything. So you're noticing right now we have a pretty decent sounding drum set with 3 plugins. Sorry, 4 plugins, which is not bad, right? We're going quickly. The last thing I'd like to do, and this is probably going to sound weird, but I'd like to put more glue on the set. And to do so, I'm going to create another bus that I'm going to call originally full set. And I'm going to send both those tracks into that set. So the path, the way it is right now, is I have my 4 drum tracks that are going into a clean drum bus that I'm minimally processing with a tape plugin and a little bit of EQ. They're also going through auxes into a crush that I'm crushing. And then the clean and the crush are going to go together into another aux. Who did I lose? Whoa, you had a lot of coffee. That's awesome. And then on that bus, I'm going to put, out of intuition again, I'm going to try and put in this Fairchild thing because it looks cool, man. Whoa, trippy. It must sound good. It looks good, right? All right, so this is where we started without it. Let me match levels. Now, listen to the distance, and I know it's a weird concept, but listen to the distance between the bass drum and the snare. Imagine this as, again, 2 objects. What is the distance between them with and without the compressor? Okay? Without. With. Notice how it gets closer and a little thicker and denser and fills the space. I'll do it again. Without. With. Fair enough? Okay, so I think enough of the drums. I'm tired of them. Let's move on. Let's listen to the bass.